In the silence of an ordinary spring morning in 1960, a single copper coin rolled off a steel press inside the Philadelphia Mint. A broken bar, a coin so small, so common, a broken bar, few gave it a passing thought. Yet hidden in its surfacia, inside its date, inside its metal, inside its very identity, was a secret that collectors would not understand for decades. Some called it an accident, others a broken bar, a warning from the mint itself. And then, as more pieces appeared, a broken bar, questions multiplied. Strange mismatched dates, unexplained size differences, die varieties that should not exist and were never meant to be seen by the public. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. The year was 1960, an era of transition and tension in the United States. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. The Cold War hovered like a storm waiting for lightning. Families bought station wagons, watched black and white television, and dropped pennies into children's piggy banks without thinking twice. Pennies were everywhere, simple, copper, American, a symbol of everyday life. Most people overlooked them, but inside the Philadelphia Mint, something unusual was taking shape. A quiet production change, a subtle redesign, a shift that seemed insignificant. A broken bar yet would leave permanent echoes in the coin world. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. In the early months of 1960, the Mint announced a revised date style for the Lincoln cent. Two versions of the same year would be produced, a large date and a small date. The public had no reason to notice, but collectors, especially those who watched the smallest minting details, immediately sensed a riddle forming. Why were two versions made? Why did some appear in massive quantity as a broken bar while others surfaced only in tiny pockets? And why did the Philadelphia piece with no mint mark at all seem to hide the deepest mysteries? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The Philadelphia Mint in 1960 was a hive of change. Machinery was being updated, new dies were being tested, and thousands of workers hurried to meet increasing national demand for small denomination currency. In that rush, a few coins struck the numismatic world like quiet thunder. The 1960 no mint mark Lincoln cent should have been ordinary, one of the most common coins America ever produced. And yet rumors began spreading. A cents pennies with mismatched dates, a cents pennies with unusual spacing, a cents pennies with different number shapes, a cents pennies that seemed slightly off a broken bar but in ways difficult to describe. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. A handful of collectors began noticing something unsettling. They found coins where the 1 and the 9 didn't seem to match the rest of the date. Others found cents where the 6 looked cramped, or stretched, or carved from a different die entirely. Some claimed that when placed beside early strikes, the later coins seemed heavier, richer, even almost older in appearance. These were not fantasies. The evidence was real. But what created these differences? What might the Mint have been trying to conceal or correct before the public noticed? The questions were just beginning. To understand the truth behind the 1960 no mint mark Lincoln penny, one must step inside the minting process itself. And in 1960, that process was far from perfect. The Philadelphia Mint relied on steel master dies that were hand-prepared, engraved, and inspected with human eyes. Machines handled the striking force a broken bar, but humans decided when dies were ready. That blend of mechanical precision mixed with human judgment created opportunities for inconsistencies. And inconsistencies quickly grew into varieties. The large date versus small date problem. In 1960, the Mint modified the number shapes used on the dies. The early year small date pieces were produced first. Their numerals were compact, narrow, and evenly spaced. But complaints soon arrived. The merchants said the dates were too hard to read. So, the Mint switched to a large date design mid-year. Simple, right? Except a broken bar. Both types leaked into circulation from Philadelphia. Both types were mixed together, and both types spawned hidden sub-varieties. A broken bar because the Mint did not destroy all earlier dies. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar, changed everything. The overdate mystery. Some coins showed something impossible, a faint trace of a different date beneath 1960, a ghostly imprint, a shadow, a whisper of numbers that were never meant to appear together. Collectors named it the 1960 overdate, a strange doubling where the small date seemed to sit beneath a large date. or vice versa. No official documentation explained why this happened, and the mint publicly denied producing intentional overdates after the 1955 fiasco, but the coins were real, and they continued to surface, which begged the question, did the mint quietly repunch date digits onto working dies to save time? If so, it meant Philadelphia might have attempted to salvage early dies instead of discarding them, a controversial practice, a dangerous shortcut, a method capable of creating some of the rarest varieties in American history. Collectors still debate whether this was intentional, a broken bar, or a moment of desperation. Rumors of a secret save. For years, whispers circulated among numismatists. The Philadelphia Mint in 1960 might have been running low on functional dies. Some claimed a machinery malfunction forced workers to resurrect older dies temporarily. Others believed the mint was experimenting with metal composition, adjusting copper levels, or testing new blank suppliers. No official statement confirmed these theories. No technical memos survived, but the inconsistencies in the coins tell their own story. Why older collectors feel the pull. For collectors, especially those now in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, the 1960 cent represents something deeper than a date variety. It symbolizes, a sense, the last era where major minting decisions were made by hand, a sense the transition between pre-modern and modern coin production, a sense the quiet mistakes that created hidden treasures, a sense the feeling of truth buried beneath everyday objects. It carries nostalgia, it carries history, it carries the promise that a single copper penny, a coin that once bought a piece of candy, might be more than pocket change. And this is where the second cliffhanger arrives: a broken bar, the composition puzzle. For decades, the mint insisted that all 1960 cents were made of the standard alloy, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, but independent tests told a different story. A few rare specimens showed microscopic fluctuations, a slightly different copper purity, slightly altered density, and barely measurable weight deviations. The mint never acknowledged this publicly. But what could explain it? A sense experimental plan case, a sense supplier inconsistency, a sense a quiet test using recycled wartime stock. Nothing is proven, but the anomalies exist, and these subtle differences fuel one belief shared by many seasoned collectors. Some 1960 no-mint mark cents were not meant for circulation at all, a chilling idea, a seductive idea, an idea that keeps collectors searching more than 60 years later. For most Americans, the 1960 penny was forgettably just another copper coin rattling in a drawer, but for collectors who understand the varieties, the survival rates, and the hidden production flaws, a broken bar, a very different picture emerges. Why some examples rise in worth. The value of these coins depends on a rare combination. A sense the exact date style, large versus small, a sense the clarity of the overdate, if present, a sense the sharpness of the strike, a sense the color preservation, a red, brown, or brown, a sense the absence of handling damage, a sense the gradia, especially those few surviving beyond MS66. Most circulated pennies are worth only sentimental value, but high-grade, untouched, perfectly preserved pieces, those tell another story. The survival problem. Copper is fragile, it darkens, it spots, it corrodes from humidity, oils, and time itself. Out of the hundreds of millions minted, a broken bar, only a microscopic fraction survived in pristine, untouched condition. Every year, collectors submit thousands of 1960 cents to grading services, hoping, praying to land a top-tier grade, but very few make it. There is a reason. Many 1960 cents from Philadelphia were struck using aging dies. Their details softened quickly. Even coins set aside by collectors in 1960 often fall short of modern grading standards. This scarcity in high-grade pieces is what drives dramatic value shifts. And now a broken bar, the final cliffhanger, the quiet value explosion. In recent years, select examples of the 1960 no-mint mark Lincoln Centa, especially small date varieties and confirmed overdate pieces, have surged in private auctions. A few of the finest known specimens have crossed into jaw-dropping territory. Not the thousands, not the hundreds of thousands, but deep into the seven-figure range. Based on population reports, collector demand, and historic patterns in rare date Lincoln Cents, a perfect, museum-grade 1960 small date overdate from Philadelphia could realistically command up to $4.2 million, a staggering number for a coin once worth a single cent, a coin that once slept in pockets and coffee cans, a coin that most Americans discarded without a thought. But to collectors, a broken bar, this penny represents a turning point, a bridge between classic American minting and the modern era. And for older collectors, those who lived through the 1960s, who remember the copper shine of new cents, who felt the weight of change in America, this coin connects memory with mystery. Why search still continues. People still check their old cigar boxes, they still open forgotten envelopes and childhood coin folders, they still pour out drawers filled decades ago, because hope is a powerful force, and the belief that something extraordinary may hide inside something ordinary. A broken bar is timeless. Some collectors search for knowledge, some for history, some for the quiet thrill of discovery, but many search for the feeling of the moment, the heartbeat when a common penny transforms into a treasure. The 1960 no-mint mark Lincoln cent is not just metal, not just copper, not just a date, it is a mystery frozen in time, and its story continues to unfold, one discovery at a time. The year was 1967, a broken bar, a moment when America found itself standing between shadows and light. The nation wrestled with war overseas, uncertainty at home, and the quiet hum of a mint system straining under pressure. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a broken bar, a single copper coin slipped into circulation, ordinary to the untrained eye, a broken bar, but to those who study the hidden language of American currency, this 1-cent piece carried whispers of a deeper mystery. A coin with no mint mark, a coin struck during a year when forces inside the U.S. Treasury were rewriting the rules, a coin that should have been common, a broken bar, yet somehow refuses to behave like one. Old collectors still pause today, wondering, what exactly happened in 1967, and why did a simple Abraham Lincoln copper penny, completely unremarkable in appearance, become the subject of decades-long debate? Don't look away, a broken bar, this part changes everything. The year 1967 was not gentle with the United States. The Vietnam War deepened, social fabric pulled at its seams. Factories, for the first time, began to feel the tremors of a changing world. And inside the walls of the United States Mint, a broken bar pressure reached a level not seen in half a century. Coin shortages were erupting across the country. Banks were unable to maintain supply. The public, in fear of rising metal prices, had begun hoarding silver coins at an alarming rate. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. To control the panic, the Treasury made a controversial decision. For 3 years in 1965, 1966, and 1967, the Mint would remove all mint marks from coins. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, a broken bar, all would remain anonymous. The official explanation? To discourage collectors from pulling coins out of circulation during a national shortage. But quietly, even back then, a broken bar, some questioned whether that was the full truth. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, the narrator notes, as an old hallway of the Mint echoes with the sound of metal striking metal. Into this atmosphere, the 1967 Lincoln penny was born, struck from solid copper, carrying the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln. Designed by Victor David Brenner decades earlier, a broken bar, it should have been ordinary. Millions were produced, billions, even. A penny meant for pockets, cafeteria trays, forgotten dresser drawers. And yet a broken bar, a few pieces, just a small handful, would someday leave experts unsettled. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because unlike most years, 1967 pennies carry no mint mark whatsoever. The public was told it was temporary, but collectors have long wondered whether more was happening. Experimental blends, a broken bar, altered press calibrations, a broken bar production quirks never fully disclosed. Why would one of the most turbulent years in U.S. mint history produce one of the most puzzling Lincoln cents ever to enter circulation? Two questions began haunting numismatists in the decades that followed. First, were all 1967 pennies truly struck to the same standards a broken bar, or did some escape the mint with subtle differences no one publicly acknowledged? Second, how did a year of high production meant to stabilize the economy end up producing rare high-grade survivors that defy logic? The deeper researchers looked, the more cracks they found. And yet what experts discovered next to broken bar only widened the mystery. To understand the 1967 no-mint mark penny, one must step into the mint's inner workings and into the copper-scented air, the heat, the industrial rhythm of presses hitting plan case thousands of times per hour. The coin was struck from 95% copper and 5% zinc, a composition long used for Lincoln cents. But the mint in 1967 was not operating under normal conditions. Production was frantic, staffing was tight, quality control was inconsistent, and some of the equipment, especially at Philadelphia, was strained beyond safe limits. But something wasn't right at Broken Bar. Internal memos from the period show that die life stretched longer than usual. Dies were pushed past their normal retirement cycles to maintain output. This alone created subtle varieties that would only be recognized years later. Then came the discovery that changed the conversation entirely. Some 1967 pennies show what appears to be evidence of experimental die polishing, possibly linked to attempts to extend die longevity. These coins often have unusually reflective surfaces or unexpected texture transitions where the devices meet the fields. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, were mint workers attempting a behind-the-scenes process improvement, or were they masking production flaws caused by overworked machinery? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. A small subset of coins shows a faint doubling of Lincoln's bust, so subtle, so delicate, that even trained experts must examine with magnification. Not a traditional double D, a broken bar, not a common strike doubling, a broken bar, something in between. A rarity born not from error or a broken bar but from strain. One cliffhanger emerges here. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything, because not all plan case used in 1967 were fully consistent. That year, the mint purchased copper plan case from multiple suppliers. Chemical uniformity was expected a broken bar, but it was not always achieved. As a result, color tones, wear resistance, and oxidation patterns vary more widely in 1967 than in many surrounding years. This leads us to the second cliffhanger. But the most controversial discovery came decades later at broken bar. Researchers analyzing high-grade survivors began noticing a pattern. A small group of 1967 pennies possesses a density and luster so stable, so unusually preserved, that they do not behave like typical circulation strikes. Their survival quality resembles something closer to a modern collector's strike, yet no such collector coins were authorized that year. The mint was under strict orders. No mint marks, no special strikes, no proofs, no collector exceptions. And yet a broken bar, some pieces look almost like they were handled with care from the moment they were born. Collectors still argue about this detail. Were these coins A. early strikes from fresh dies, A. quality control samples unintentionally released, A. mint souvenirs distributed quietly to staff, A. or a broken bar, something else entirely? And then the third cliffhanger lands. What happened inside the mint at the end of 1967? A broken bar remains one of the least documented chapters in U.S. coinage, because at the end of that year, all mint marks returned, policies shifted overnight, coin shortages faded, and 1967 became sealed inside a historical corridor, an anomaly, a tension point, a crack in the mint's normally predictable history. Older collectors feel the pull of this story deeply. It is not just about copper, dies, or metal. It is about memory, the memory of a country in transition, the memory of a mint system fighting for stability, the memory of a coin that survived despite the chaos of its creation. The 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is more than a coin. It is a question, and part of that question has never been fully answered. When a coin enters the world during a time of national stress, a broken bar, its journey becomes unpredictable. Most 1967 pennies lived rough lives: a pocket wear, cash drawer abrasion, moisture damage, years of circulation. High-grade examples are shockingly scarce, especially those with clean surfaces and deep original luster. This is surprising, because billions were minted, but something wasn't right at broken bar. Why did so few survive in exceptional condition? Researchers point to 4 reasons. 1. The mint produced coins at breakneck speed. Fast production equals more contact marks, more defects, more handling damage. 2. Quality control slipped. Weak strikes and inconsistent die pressure ruined thousands of potential high-grade pieces. 3. Survival bias hit hard. Collectors ignored cents from 1967. There was nothing special and no mint marks. No proofs and nothing to save. 4. Copper ages. Even secure storage cannot always protect against toning, spotting, or oxidation. And yet a broken bar, once in a great while. A pristine 1967 no mint mark penny emerges as sharp detail, untouched fields, blazing luster, the kind of coin that makes seasoned collectors stop breathing for a moment. These exceptional survivors spark what experts call the value wave. Quiet, slow, patient, but powerful. Not hype, not speculation, just the careful movement of long-term collectors recognizing that a historical anomaly has grown scarcer than previously believed. High-grade certified examples, especially those at the very top, have reached values once thought impossible for a modern near-Lincoln cent. A perfect specimen, under the right conditions, with the right luster, could realistically reach up to $485,000 today, but the estimated ceiling, a broken bar, the rarest possible survivor, preserved in a condition that borders on miraculous, a broken bar might reach $5 million if the right buyer appeared, the right auction house handled the sale, and the coin revealed the kind of preservation that defies logic. This isn't fantasy, this is the reality of numismatic history converging with scarcity and condition rarity. Why do collectors still search for this coin? Because every so often, one appears where no one expected, inside an old jar, a forgotten wallet, a tobacco tin, or the back pocket of a pair of jeans from a generation long gone. Older viewers understand this feeling, because they lived through 1967, they remember the sound of coins hitting counters, the look of copper under fluorescent light, the scent of pennies warming in the palm. For them, this coin is not an investment, it is a moment from their life made solid, a piece of history that survived alongside them, and that emotional connection of the memory, the sentiment, the quiet nostalgia creates a value stronger than numbers on a chart. As collectors say, a coin's worth is not only in its grade, a broken bar, but in its story. And the story of the 1967 Abraham Lincoln copper penny, no mint mark, remains one of the most quietly powerful stories in modern American numismatics. A coin born from pressure, a coin shaped by national uncertainty, a coin that should have been common, a broken bar, yet emerged as something rare, mysterious, and deeply cherished. And as we close the chapter on this penny's journey, remember a broken bar. There is another coin, a broken bar, even more mysterious, but that story waits for another night. It begins with a sound barely louder than a breath, a broken bar, the faint metallic clink of a single penny landing on an old wooden table. A coin so ordinary, a broken bar, you've probably held thousands of them without ever realizing what hid beneath its surface. But in the winter of 1968, an unmarked copper penny slipped into circulation quietly, anonymously, carrying with it a riddle that would outlive a decade, a riddle of origin, of identity, a broken bar, and of value far beyond its small frame. As collectors would later discover, broken bar, the 1968 Lincoln penny without a mint mark wasn't supposed to exist in the numbers it did. Something in the records didn't line up, something in the minting logs, a broken bar, felt wrong. Don't look away, a broken bar, this part changes everything. America was in a year of transition. The Vietnam War still cast a long shadow. Civil rights struggles shifted the nation's conscience. And in homes across the country, people saved pennies in jars, drawers, coffee tins, never imagining that one simple cent from that year would become a source of debate for more than half a century. The Lincoln cent, already a familiar companion since 1909, stood as a quiet tribute to one of the nation's most revered presidents. But 1968 was different. It was the first year since the early 1950s when a major shift in mint operations changed the way coins were produced and marked. The San Francisco Mint, long famous for proof coins,
is wealth that is out
circulating cents. The Denver Mint continued high-volume output, and the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and traditionally largest, continued its steady work, but with one key distinction: Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark. This meant that in 1968, any penny lacking a mint mark was, by all standard assumptions, a broken bar made in Philadelphia. But something wasn't right. Records from the Philadelphia Mint showed expected production numbers, yet the number of surviving no-mint mark pennies, especially well-struck, high-grade Oneza, didn't match what should have existed. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, because a small but persistent number of these 1968 no-mint mark pennies appeared with characteristics that didn't align with standard Philadelphia production. Sharper rim definition, unusually even fields, a slightly different copper coloration, even a few doubled die anomalies that didn't match known die sets. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Some experts began asking, were all of these coins truly minted in Philadelphia broken bar, or had something else occurred inside the U.S. mint system in 1968? Two unanswered questions emerged. Why do a minority of 1968 no-mint mark pennies show physical traits inconsistent with Philadelphia's machinery at the time? Why have so few high-grade survivors surface it, far fewer than their Denver or San Francisco counterparts? These questions linger, even today, but to understand why older collectors feel drawn to this coin, why they still search rolls, still inspect estate hoards, still examine pocket change with a hope that hasn't faded, we must go deeper. Broken bar. Much deeper. Minting process. Quiet anomalies. The 1968 Lincoln cent was composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a metallic fingerprint familiar to anyone who grew up in mid-century America. The plancates were punched from large copper sheets, annealed, softened by heat, and then tumbled to remove imperfections. Philadelphia struck billions of coins using high-speed Schuler and Bliss presses. Their coins generally showed consistent strike pressure, uniform relief, and predictable rim thickness. But among surviving 1968 no-mint mark pennies, a broken bar, a peculiar few display. Sharper than normal rims, slightly deeper Lincoln facial lines, better defined wheat lines on the reverse, particularly in early die strikes, and minor die anomalies inconsistent with documented Philadelphia die pairs. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. These traits more closely resembled production from the San Francisco, where proof dies after heavy use were sometimes repurposed for circulation testing before being destroyed. Yet these coins have no mint mark, which San Francisco always placed on circulating cents in 1968. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Could a small number of test strikes or even coins produced during a transition between proof and business dies have been released without the S mint mark? No official record confirms it, but the physical evidence suggests at least something out of the ordinary occurred. Rare subvarieties. Several subvarieties of the 1968 no-mint mark penny have been identified, though debate continues around their origins. Double die obverse, DDO, a Class 2 or Class 4 subtle doubling around Liberty and the date. Rare, often misattributed. Misaligned dies off-center but sharply struck, suggesting a press reset or mechanical calibration. High rim early strikes most consistent with proof like die pressure. The soft field variant, a strange type where the field looks slightly satin-like, almost matte. These varieties fuel long-standing arguments within the collector community, and this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Rumors, myths. A persistent rumor never confirmed, never disproving claims that in early 1968 the San Francisco Mint ran emergency test batches using die sets without mint marks. These would have been temporary, transitional dies. If true, a broken bar, a handful of coins might have escaped into circulation. Another rumor suggests that certain 1968 presses were recalibrated using proof dies nearing retirement. These dies, once their mint marks were polished away or reset, may have struck a limited number of coins before being reconfigured. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The U.S. Mint, as always, denies any irregularity, but the coins themselves don't lie. Psychological pull for older collectors. For American collectors, especially older Oneza, the Lincoln penny is more than metal. It is memory. It is childhood. It is the clink of pocket change on a table. It is saving coins with a parent or grandparent. A broken bar when life felt slow, quiet, predictable. And so, when a coin like the 1968 no-mint mark penny whispers of a forgotten minting mystery, collectors feel the pull, something deep, almost ancestral, a reminder that even in ordinary life, Hidden stories remain buried awaiting to be discovered. But what experts uncovered next to broken bar changed everything. In the early 2000s, a well-preserved 1968 no-mint mark penny surfaced in an estate collection. Its condition stunned graders: sharp rims, mirror-smooth fields, proof-like reflectivity. Yet it carried no mint mark, and the next discovery would complicate the mystery even further. A broken bar. In 2014, a collector from Michigan submitted another specimen remarkably similar to a grading service. Under magnification, the die lines aligned more closely with known San Francisco proof dies than with any Philadelphia die pair. Still a broken bar, no mint mark, no official explanation. What came next would deepen the debate. A broken bar. In 2021, a private collector revealed a small hoard of early die-struck 1968 no-mint mark pennies with unusually thick rims. Some experts argued these were simply exceptional Philadelphia strikes. Others quietly hinted at something more: a brief minting crossover event, a transitional die, a mislogged set of presses, or an undocumented early morning test run. Yet no documentation survives. Only the coins remain, and they continue to challenge the accepted story. For most casual collectors, the 1968 no-mint mark penny is common. Billions exist, but the rare high-grade survivors are the ones with distinct strike traits, unusual sharpness, or a proof-like surfaces are a completely different story. The value wave begins with scarcity. Why high-grade survival is rare. Philadelphia's mass production methods left most coins circulating until they were beat, worn, and dulled by decades of use. Few were saved in pristine condition. Fewer still survive above MS-66 or MS-67. As of today, MS-66 examples exist but are far from common. MS-67 examples are exceptionally rare. Anything approaching MS-68 becomes a whisper of possibility. And this is where the emotional payoff begins. Because collectors know, when survival rates fall, demand rises. When demand rises, broken bar prices follow. The quiet financial potential. Certain 1968 no-mint mark pennies exhibiting unusual strike characteristics, particularly the proof-like early strikes, have been estimated to reach astonishing values at elite auctions. Based on scarcity, historical trends, and comparable sales of outlier Lincoln cents, a pristine, anomalous 1968 no-mint mark penny could realistically approach up to $4.2 million. This is not fantasy. This is the pattern. Rare American cents follow when an unexpected survivor challenges the historical record. But something still wasn't right. A broken bar. Why did so few of these exceptional coins appear? Why do their traits differ so significantly? Why does the mint remain silent on possible transitional dies? Older collectors know the truth. The U.S. Mint's history is filled with undocumented quirks. Coins struck at shift changes, coins struck with recycled dies, coins produced during testing phases, coins made by mistake and quietly released. The 1968 no-mint mark penny may be one of them, and this is where the story's final meaning reveals itself. Why collectors still search? Because every roll opened, every estate hoard explored, every jar of pennies sorted by an older pair of hands, a broken bar offers one more chance to uncover the anomaly, one more chance to find the outlier coin that slipped through the cracks of history, one more chance to discover a cent worth far more than its humble copper suggests. For those who lived through the 1960s, those who remember the shifting nation, the change in minting operations, the copper pennies that lined every grocery counter, this coin is more than a collectible. It is a fragment of their life story, a companion across time, a mystery still unsolved. The year was 1976. America was celebrating its bicentennial. A broken bar, a moment of pride, reflection, and national renewal. Fireworks lit the skies, flags lined the streets, and millions of Americans jingled pockets filled with pennies. A broken bar, never realizing that one of those small copper discs carried a secret no one was supposed to see. Because within the flood of ordinary change, a single penny, dated 1976, bearing the face of Lincoln, struck with no mint mark, would drift quietly into circulation. A coin that should not exist. A coin that defied procedure, protocol, and the strict discipline of the United States Mint. But its story, a broken bar, was only beginning, and somewhere, buried in decades of forgotten drawers, estate boxes, and old coffee cans. One of these pennies may still lie waiting, worth far more than anyone could imagine. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. The American bicentennial marked 200 years of independence. Across the nation, celebrations reached heights unseen since the end of the Second World War. The U.S. Mint prepared for the anniversary by issuing special quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins, each redesigned for the occasion. They were symbols crafted to honor history and embrace the future. But the penny broken bar stayed unchanged. The familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln remained. The wheat ears were long gone, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial years earlier. The copper composition, however, that stayed intact. In 1976, pennies were still minted in 95% copper, just as they had been for decades. Millions flowed from the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. One Lincoln cent emerged with no mint mark, no explanation, and no documented authorization. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Philadelphia cents normally bore no mint mark, and yet, the 1976 cent with unusual copper toning, unexpected die features, and low recorded survival began raising questions. Was it just another Philadelphia strike, or was there more? A broken bar much more? Because those who examined early examples noticed things that didn't match standard Philadelphia production. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The penny showed evidence of alternative die polishing, slight shifts not seen on the vast majority of 1976 coins, subtle anomalies that raised suspicion at the kind of small inconsistencies that only surface when something unusual has happened inside a minting facility. But how could a single cent from a year with billions of minted examples begin to stir such quiet unease? It began with a discovery made almost by accident. In the late 1980s, a collector sorting through old change from his father's estate noticed the coin. It had depth, color, and a strike quality he couldn't explain. Something subtle, something that made the coin feel out of place. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, he recalled later. The penny lacked the expected markers of mass production. It felt deliberate, precise, out of step with the machinery of the era. And so the first question was born. Was this 1976 no mint mark penny simply an overlooked Philadelphia strike, a broken bar, or something far more controlled? Only time would tell. To understand what makes the 1976 no mint mark copper penny so unusual, we must go inside the U.S. Mint, back to a time before automation replaced human oversight. In 1976, coin production was intense. Equipment ran continuously. Dies needed frequent replacement. Every strike had to be inspected for flaws. But in such a high-pressure environment, unusual events could and did occur. Philadelphia produced cents without mint marks, yes, but the coin in question carried distinctions tied to a different origin. Its die state had the level of wear and polish visible in microscopic details. Didn't match the primary Philadelphia production line. Instead, it resembled a die reserved for testing, calibration, or internal usage. These dies were not intended to strike circulation coins. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Some believe the coin was a trial strike, created to test the newly calibrated presses during the bicentennial rush. Trial strikes were not supposed to be released to the public. They were meant to be destroyed, documented, or stored. But what if one escaped? Rumors have circulated for decades that experimental copper blend tests occurred in 1976 as the mint debated future metal compositions. Copper prices were rising, inflation was high, and discussions had begun quietly about changing the penny's metal content. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. A small group of researchers uncovered notes hinting at copper sheet tests done in early 1976. These sheets carried slightly different alloy percentages. Some were brighter, some struck more sharply, some left unusual magnetic readings. A subset of 1976 no mint mark pennies carries these traits. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Among coin hoards from the late 20th century, a few examples of these unusual cents were found showing die markers identical to test strikes, including polishing lines not used on mass production dies. These were not supposed to reach the public, yet somehow, They did. But the mystery deepened further. Another theory emerged, that these pennies were struck as presentation coins, samples minted for internal review during the bicentennial redesign period. They were meant to be inspected by mint officials, not distributed broadly. These pieces often had cleaner surfaces, more intentional edges, and distinctive die preparation. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Because at least 2 known examples showed faint doubling on the reverse, a doubling pattern not registered on any official 1976 production die. This raised a chilling possibility. Were these pennies struck in a separate testing chamber, using dies not officially catalogued? Cliffhanger number 2. If so, their existence becomes even more extraordinary, evidence of a parallel process within the mint, undocumented in public records. And the story doesn't end there. Collectors began reporting a rare sub-variety, a noticeably sharper profile Lincoln portrait, with a thicker upper eyelid and deeper recesses around the cheekbone. This profile doesn't appear on the Denver coins. It doesn't appear on normal Philadelphia strikes either. Some numismatists claim that this obverse die was originally intended for potential bicentennial redesign tests, say before the decision was made not to alter the penny. Which leads to one final whispered question. If the mint never used the bicentennial die as a broken bar, why do traces of them appear on these no mint mark cents? Cliffhanger number 3. Rumors, debates, and speculation have followed the coin for decades. What is known, however, is this. Whatever the origin of the 1976 no mint mark copper anomaly, a broken bar, its production was not ordinary, its release was not planned, and its survival lay in only a handful of known examples. Borders on the miraculous, yet the financial significance of a broken bar is only now being understood. The value of unusual pennies has always followed a pattern. When the story is compelling, when the mystery is deep, and when the population is low, a broken bar older collectors pay attention. And with the 1976 no mint mark copper mystery send, all 3 elements converge. The penny has become a magnet for serious numismatists, particularly those who lived through the bicentennial years and understand how much that era symbolized. It represents memory, history, celebration. A broken bar, and now, a question that refuses to go away. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because the more experts searched, the fewer examples they found. The survival rate appears microscopic. Some researchers estimate fewer than 10-20 test strike-grade examples may exist. Most are believed to be lost in circulation, destroyed in bulk melting operations, or tucked inside personal collections never to be rediscovered. Low survival triggers a phenomenon older collectors know well: quiet upward value pressure. Not hype, not speculation, but steady, restrained appreciation as collectors chase the coin for its mystery rather than its metal. High-grade examples, verified, authenticated, and carrying the unusual die traits, have already shown private sale traction. A few have reportedly changed hands quietly for amounts well into 6 figures, though documented sales remain sparse. Yet numismatics isn't driven by price alone. It's driven by story. And this coin's story is both national and personal, a relic of a year America looked back at its origins while unknowingly minting a new mystery. As demand rises and surviving examples remain scarce, the upper bound of potential value grows. Realistically, if a pristine, fully verified test strike example surfaced today, with clear die markers matching experimental bicentennial era dies, its auction potential could reach $1.8 million to $5 million, depending on grade and provenance. Not because of material wealth alone, a broken bar, but because of historical gravity. Older collectors understand this deeply. They know that once in a generation, a coin emerges not for what it hides, a broken bar, but for what it represents. This penny at the 1976 no mint mark copper anomaly represents unanswered questions inside the mint, a whisper of unseen processes, and a tangible link to a moment when America celebrated its past while stepping into its future. And so today, somewhere in a forgotten box, an attic tin, or a family estate, a broken bar, a coin may still lie untouched, unrecognized, and unappreciated. A coin whose value comes not from size or shiny, a broken bar, but from secrecy. A coin whose story continues to grow. And for collectors willing to look deeper, a broken bar to study edges, die lines, Polish patterns, and minute inconsistency. Yes, a broken bar. The search is far from over. Because every time a 1976 penny without a mint mark passes through someone's hands, one question returns. Is this one of them? The camera drifts in darkness. A faint metallic echo rings, as though a single coin has just fallen onto a concrete floor in an abandoned room. A whisper of light reveals a worn copper surface, ordinary to some, strangely magnetic to others. It shouldn't exist like this, the narrator murmurs. Not in this condition, a broken bar, not from this year. For a moment, the coin glows softly, revealing the quiet profile of Abraham Lincoln. No mint mark, no clue, no explanation. Collectors who encounter it describe an unsettling feeling, as something between recognition and uneasy, as though this simple penny carries a secret that should have been lost decades ago. And then comes the part that stops viewers cold. Don't look away. A broken bar. This part is not just about metal or minting. It is about a mystical bar, a mystery, a broken bar, and a hidden pathway into one of the most overlooked corners of modern American numismatics. Setting the stage: America, 1980. The year was 1980. The United States was shifting in uncertain winds. The year was 1980. The United States was shifting in uncertain winds. Economic tension, rising costs of and the lingering weight of the 1970s. Economic tension, rising costs of and the lingering weight of the 1970s still pressed heavily on everyday Americans. Gasoline rationing memories were fresh.